Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're in the garage today and we're going to be doing some upgrades. This garage is going to be used for a shop for a number of things, so it's time to make it look like a shop. So I'm just going to show you what the builder did and kind of what's standard in an attached garage. If you notice, the builder insulated the two inside walls and the ceiling, again insulated and drywalled with vapor barrier, but they left this one outside wall, 2x4 framed wall, uninsulated. It was an option for an upgrade, but most houses have this one wall left exposed. So in order to seal this up and brighten it up, actually, we're going to show you how to install a batt insulation R12 into these 2x4 walls. And this is really applicable for basement framing, house framing, garage framing. What I'm going to show you today is applicable to all those three. And not only 2x4 walls, but 2x6 walls as well. We really got a decent space here with 2 out of the 4 walls already insulated and drywalled. We got an insulated overhead door. So adding this and adding the vapor barrier and eventually the drywall is going to really clean up this space. So one of the other reasons we're doing this as well, guys, is this is a garage definitely in the winter months. And what I've been noticing is you park a couple of vehicles in here, and with heavily insulated walls and ceiling already in place, the heat from the engines of the vehicles doesn't dissipate quickly. So what happens is on the other side of this 2x4 wall, you have below zero temperatures. Inside the garage, it's above zero. You got the heat from the engines that doesn't go anywhere quickly, and it ends up building up frost and ice on this 2x4 wall. So eventually what's going to happen is the OSB is going to end up either molding or swelling from the moisture. It is temporarily water resistant, but as this material ages, it could definitely swell and rot, and then you're gonna have a big problem. That's one of the main reasons why we're doing this as well, is to prevent that ice buildup in the winter season. So having the entire garage insulated, it becomes a non-issue. And really, since this is going to be used as more of a shop, it's a nice upgrade to boot. The product we're going to be installing today, Owens Corning fiberglass batt insulation. This stuff is known as pink R12. That is the insulation value we're going to get out of this material. It's 3.5 inches thick. And take a look at the specs here quick. This is 15-inch wide material, and it's designed for 3.5 inch thick framing, which is what we have. You get just under 100 square feet per bundle, so you get quite a bit here. And yeah, it's fairly economical too. As always, guys, let's go through the tools we're going to use today. Not a lot involved in an installation like this. Tape measure, of course. Utility knife, one of the snap blade knives they call it. This one is an H1 Olfa. It's a 1-inch blade, a really nice solid knife. You need some straight edges for the cutting that you have to do. So there's a couple options. I like to use a level. This particular level is 4 feet long, so it reaches from end to end on the batt in case you got to make lengthwise cuts. You can also use a T-square for drywall, which works pretty well too. But honestly, I prefer using just a carpenter's level. It's a thicker edge to cut against, and it's a little safer when you're doing your cuts. Last thing I'll point out here, guys, is it's nice to have a cutting surface. So today we're going to be using just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. I just had it laying around from another reno. Yeah, we can take these batts, we can cut them on concrete, but it's going to really dull the knife blade. So it helps to have a surface to cut on. So whether that's cutting on a 2x6 or a chunk of plywood, whatever you got to extend the life of your knife blade works best. I just want to explain a couple details before we get going here. So as mentioned, we're doing a 2x4 wall. So our cavity in the framing here, you can have a look, is 3.5 inches thick. And so is the insulation batt, so it's designed to fit into this type of cavity. One other thing I'll show you here is these studs are framed at 16 inches on center. So how do you find what your centers are? You take your tape and you put it in the center of each stud, and you see the red mark on the tape is right at 16. So these are what's called 16-inch centers. So a 16-inch on-center framed wall basically leaves you with a cavity of 14.5 inches. See that there? And the insulation bats, as we talked about before, they're cut at 15 inches. So what you end up getting is a nice snug fit. You don't have to jam it in there or bunch it up to fit it. It's actually designed to fit perfectly in these wall cavities. Now, of course, depending on how your wall's framed, you're not gonna have full-on 14.5 inch pockets all the way along the wall. You can see there, we have one that's around 10 or 11 inches over there. We got smaller stuff here where the framing runs up to the second floor. So we got like a 4-inch chunk, another 8-inch piece. Of course, your king studs underneath the window, your cripples, and then you get over to some more standard framing, and then into the corner again, it tightens up. So you are gonna have to cut some pieces to fit. We're gonna show you how straightforward that is. Just one last note, guys. You don't wanna crush this material to get it into your space. If it feels like it's fitting a little tight, grab your utility knife and your straight edge and trim the piece down so that it's just a snug fit, not a fit where you have to bunch it up and jam it into the cavity, because all you're gonna do in that case is just reduce the R value. The insulation is designed to fit snug, but not crushed up and balled up in the cavity. So just a quick note there. Right, so we're gonna start by opening up our first bundle here. I'll try and show you a fairly straightforward way to do this instead of just ripping it open and having it. This is under a bit of pressure, so you want to be somewhat careful when you're opening this. So I typically start at one end and just cut the plastic down the middle. Trying not to cut through the first bat that's in there, so basically just scoring it. And as you're going to open this up, it's going to expand. So I get it open in the middle like that. And then what I would do is I would cut open each end. Same process. And just let the bats start to slowly expand, just like so. And then it's not all over the place. So as we get going here, there's a couple things I like to do. I'm gonna take the shop vac and just clean up some of these cavities. Usually when you open them up, you'll find a bunch of debris left over by the builder. So we're gonna get rid of that stuff just so that we have nice clean wall cavities. These aren't too bad, but I mean, there's some drywall dust and leftover stuff that we're gonna get rid of. And the other thing that I like to do is go around and find all the studs that are 16 inches on center, like we mentioned, and sort of start with all the full pieces first. And then once you get all that done, you're left with the pieces that you gotta cut, and then you can start measuring and cutting material. But I like to start by throwing all the full pieces in first. Now they call this stuff Eco Touch. That just means it's formaldehyde free in the process of making it. So I will recommend that you throw some gloves on. This stuff can, the little bits of fiberglass can get into your skin. It can be very itchy. And I'm also going to recommend throwing on a little N95 mask just to keep from breathing in as you're cutting, and the particles of this stuff are floating around as you're handling it, putting it in the walls. So I'm going to recommend throwing on a little bit of PPE here just to keep your skin protected and save your lungs. As I mentioned before, guys, we're going to do a quick cleanup here. We'll speed this along just to make sure the plates are all cleaned off here before filling up the cavities with the insulation. One thing I forgot to add, nice thing about this garage is it has near 11-foot high ceilings. So it's a nice feature, but the little 2-foot step ladder I was using isn't going to cut it. So we upgraded to a 6-footer so we can reach these top sheets here. That's going to make it a lot easier. So yeah, if you're working on a tall ceiling, you're definitely going to need a couple different heights of ladders. So in this case, we're using a 2-footer and we're using a 6-foot step ladder. So we got all of our full pieces in, standard bats. I just want to point out a couple things before we start making our cuts. What do you do when you run into an outlet mounted on the wall? You can see this outlet has a plastic boot on it, so it's ready for vapor barrier and it meets the building code. But you got a bit of a gap behind here. You got probably 1.5 inches if you squish this boot. So here's what you need to do. This bat material splits in half really nicely. So your outlet box is 2 inches by 3 inches. So take your straight edge and cut a piece of bat off just like that, and then cut it down. So you end up with roughly, it doesn't have to be exact, roughly a 2 inch by 3 inch piece, just like so. And then push this insulation behind your box area. So that way when you cut your notch out for your full piece, you've got insulation behind your box. So we're gonna do that on both of our outlets. What we're dealing with here. And that's gonna provide a little bit of R value for you there, and it won't be a cold spot. So we're at the point where we're going to start making our cuts, and here's what you do. Here's what I like to do. Take your tape, measure your wall cavity. I get 5 3/4, and I'm going to add a 1/2 inch just like they do on the regular size bat. So I'm going to go 6 1/4 on this particular piece, and you're going to repeat this in all your cut areas. So this one measures 6 inches. I'm going to go 6 1/2. This cavity here measures 11 1/2. I'm going to cut it at 12 inches. So you're going to be left with a snug fit, which is what you want. And that's basically how you do your cuts. Okay, so I got my mask off so you guys can hear me. You want to be fairly precise with this, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but err on the side of caution. I'm trying to cut 6 1/4. I'm measuring out around roughly 6 1/2. So take your straight edge, press down into the bat, grab your utility knife, and just straight pull. And that's how this material cuts. And then you're left with your cut piece. So another quick thing I'll show you here, a quick tip. The beauty of these snap blade knives is you snap off segments and you're left with a sharp blade every time. So if you start feeling your blade dragging through the insulation like I did there, I've made a few cuts with this knife already. Take your pliers, put it on the edge of the blade up to the line that you see and just push away from you, and you snap your blade off. You end up with a fresh blade. It's gonna cut like butter. So here's another tip. Once you make your cuts, measure what you have left. In this case, I got a piece that's 9 1/4 inches left. I'm going to check my other wall cavities just to see if anything measures roughly out to that dimension. I've got one over here that's just shy of 9 inches. So I'm going to take this piece before I cut it down any smaller, and I'm going to put it right into this cavity, and we're minimizing our waste. So last thing I'm going to show you on cutting insulation is how do you deal with one of these outlet boxes, one of these gang boxes. So you got to take some measurements, grab your tape. You know the gang box is roughly 2 inches wide. So the measurement you want is the bottom of the box. I get 34 1/2, and the top of the box I get 39. So what you're going to do, take your tape over to a clean bat, orient yourself as to where your box is in the bat, which is going to be roughly around here. So I'm going to take my tape, I'm going to lock it out. Again, it doesn't have to be super precise, but I'm going to score at 34.5. I'm going to score again at 39 with my knife. Then I'm going to go in at roughly 2.25, and I'm going to score that mark too. So then once you have your marks all made, you can cut them out a little firmer, tear that piece away, and you're left with a bat that's going to go around your outlet box. We'll pop that in quick. So we've got our small piece I showed you before that's behind the box, and we got our cut bat in around the box. That's basically how you tackle outlets. It doesn't matter if it's in the basement, in the garage, wherever it is. In the house framing itself, that's how you do it. The boot is going to prevent any cold drafts from coming in this box opening here. So yeah, once you get your vapor barrier on, I'll show you that in another video, but once you get your vapor barrier on, you tape this with your tuck tape, you're going to end up with a sealed outlet box. All right guys, now that I've showed you a couple pro tips on how to cut and how to deal with outlet boxes, and just double checking your cuts to make sure you don't have a ton of waste. I'm going to get back to cutting the rest of the pieces for this wall. We're going to speed things up for you because it's kind of repetitive. But again, measure, add your 1/2 inch to your cavities, cut your bats, gently push them in. So we're going to get this wall finished up, and we'll wrap this up for you. All right guys, that pretty much wraps it up. We've got all our cuts made, all our pieces put in, everything is nice and snug. Nothing is stuffed into the wall. Everything is, I guess you want to call it fluffy. One thing I will mention I came across, what happens if you find a wall cavity that's wider than the 15-inch piece? So what you do, you got to put your pieces in together, but in this case, this happened to be, I think, a 19.5-inch wide cavity. So you marry two pieces together. They basically sort of friction fit and hold each other together. You can see top and bottom here. In the next video, once we get to the vapor barrier, we get the poly on the wall, you'll see how the poly holds everything in. If it was loose, this is fitting really snug, but if it was loose, you could strap it with some real thin material just to hold it in place until you get your vapor barrier up and staple that in, and then that's not going to go anywhere. So there it is, guys. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this one. Thanks for again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you for more DIY content. And last pro tip, it doesn't hurt to wear long sleeves. The fiberglass material, even though it's a little safer these days, once the little bits get into your skin, it can be irritating for a couple days afterwards. So even if the weather's warm, you know what, throw on some long sleeves or a work jacket or something like that. Protect yourself. Again, thanks again for watching. We'll catch you guys in the next one.